I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hi, friends. Welcome to today's show. I have a few things to say before we get into our guest. First of all, I just want to say thank you to those of you who've checked out Patreon. If you haven't yet, head on over there to support the show, patreon.com/notyourgranny'squiltshow. When you become a patron, you get a Not Your Granny's Quilt Show logo sticker sent right to your door. And thank you to those of you who've already been there and have signed up. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you hanging out. Next, I would also like to thank you so much for your love on the merch site so far. I'm so excited to have things to share with you so that we can find our fellow not your granny's quilters out there in the world. I'm really looking forward to us having a way to show our love for other quilters and find each other out in the world. So if you haven't already, go check out the merch shop. It's nygqs.printify.me, M-E. It's nygqs.printify.me. I'll put the link in the show notes below. And now for our guest. Today we have Victoria of A Midlife Quilter. She is an AGF Sewcialite. She is a quilter who discovered the love of sewing and quilting in her 40s, well, at 40, I guess, and hasn't stopped since. She's a pattern writer. She is a janome maker. She has, you can tell, a ton of passion for the craft. And so I just love chatting with her today, and I can't wait for you to hear the convo. So let's jump right in. Welcome to the show, Victoria. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Do you go by Victoria or Vicky or
I do
anything
go
else?
by Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like to check. I don't want to call people anything they don't want to be called. So
Oh, yeah. No problem. No, the only people who call me Vicky are my mom and my dad.
really,
Everyone else calls me Victoria. Yeah.
that's so funny. Yeah, I have Mandy as a nickname, but it's just my family. Like my
Yeah.
husband doesn't even call me that. And if he does, I'm like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah. That's the way it is. My husband calls me Victoria. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I'm just like, I don't know why, but there's just like literally a handful of people who can call me Mandy. The rest of the world, I'm like, don't do it.
mhm.
If you want
I
to
know
live, don't
exactly
do
what
it.
you mean.
And actually, Victoria was on the slate of names for me when my mom was pregnant. So
Oh, there you
I
go.
almost was also Victoria, but Amanda won out. It was like a great great grandma's name or something like that. I don't know, but
Oh, family names are always nice, though.
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, well, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I have loved seeing all your stuff on Instagram, your gorgeous
Oh.
quilt patterns, and now you're an art gallery socialite, which is amazing. I love art gallery fabrics. I talk about it nonstop. So this is really fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, of course. So, um, I mean, your Instagram name is Midlife Quilter and your website Midlife Quilter, and because you started quilting at 40. So tell me how did that start? How did you get into that?
Well, sewing had always been something that interested me, but it's actually kind of funny because even though I always had this great like interest in it, like my mom doesn't sew, my grandmother didn't sew. My mom is not like domesticated that way at all. She doesn't like any of the domestic arts. And then my grandmother used to crochet, so that's what she did. And but I was just always interested in sewing, and I always wished I could learn, and never got around to it. Never knew anybody who like could teach me. And then when I was about 40, I thought, I want to do something I've always wanted to do. I want to learn to sew
Mhm.
using a machine. And there was going to be a class being offered somewhere here in town, but there was a scheduling conflict. Like for some reason, I couldn't get there on the dates that they were meeting and something. But I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a book and start trying to teach myself. So that's what I did. I ordered a book and worked through the little projects, from like little pillowcases to bags and things like that. And the final project was that, you could make a quilt. And I was like, oh, like I finally did it. This is it. I'm
Yeah.
there now. And and I made a quilt and I just really loved it. And I found that I had sort of a natural ability for it. And I think that's what made me stick with it because I had tried so many different crafts in the past. And I always tell everybody everything I made before was like the feed of a Pinterest fail page. Like everything I tried, I just wasn't good at it. And I was like, oh, I have this creative spirit. I have this energy I wanna make, but I just don't seem to be good at any of it. And then I found quilting and it was like just something clicked in my brain. And I just, I was never, I mean, it took me a lot of practice. It wasn't like, but it was just something I just really, really found that I loved. And I found that, I would make things and people were responding to it. And that, made me get even more interested in quilting as a whole, versus just quilting me by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I'm the same, like quilting wasn't really in my family. Like sewing was, but not quilting and until my mom started like a year and a half or two before me. And she had made
Mhm.
blankets and stuff. But yeah, it was just crazy how much you like start to uncover when you start digging into the sewing world and like how much there is to do and make. And
Right.
that's
It's
so
so
fun.
endlessly creative and I really love it. I love it. And there's just so many different types, like,
Mhm.
from whether it's art quilts or, collecting authentic like vintage quilts or really modern quilts. There's just so many different styles that it can really appeal to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really accessible if you like you picked up a book and with some basic sewing skills you worked your way into making a quilt. Like it
Mhm.
really is an accessible craft and there's so many things you can do with it and it becomes so practical. It's like if I can sew this, then I can sew that and you really do have a really good life skill that
Oh
you know
yeah.
lends to so many other cool things. So
Hmm.
that's
It's true.
awesome. Um So when did you start designing your patterns? Like how soon into your quilting journey did that come about?
Well, I learned to quilt in 2019. That was when I first started. I was towards the end of 2019.
Okay.
And then I opened my online fabric shop in 2020. Is that right? Yeah, 2020, September 2020.
Mm,
And then I just started designing patterns last November. Is when I first started really trying to learn because it was something I was like, never, no.
yeah.
I'm bad at math. I don't think I could come up with a design. And three, I know I had so many friends who were writing patterns, and I know the amount of work it takes.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of work, but it's also this vulnerability of putting something out there and seeing if anyone likes it. It's
Mhm.
more like almost emotional risk too. And I always said I wouldn't do it, but when I was offered the socialite um, position later on, I thought to myself, I this is going to be a good time to kind of up the ante. Um,
Mhm.
I felt like the position just really, they're picking kind of these really talented makers and they're all pattern designers. I'm like, I gotta bring it. I can't
Yeah.
be the only one not doing patterns. And so it really forced me to really commit to learning it.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult process initially, but and I was under a time crunch,
Mhm.
but I always tell people like when they ask me, I'm like, you know what? If I can learn it, you can learn it. It's
Yeah.
it's just going to take time and commitment, just like anything else you want in life. It's going to take time and commitment, but anyone can do it, if they really set their mind to it.
Mhm. And what did it take for you to learn? Did you take a class or did you just glean from
I
people you knew?
mostly like learning from people I knew. I was lucky to have some resources of people who were writing patterns already. And my daughter is an illustration major in college, so she's familiar with like the Adobe programs
Oh, wow.
because I had never used Adobe.
Mm.
And now I was trying to learn how to make diagrams in an Illustrator and then write the patterns in InDesign. And so it was a lot of online tutorials, you know, really great friends who came in and supported me through it. And just sitting there and like I still Google stuff all the time. I'm like, how do I
Yeah.
make this diagram happen again? How do I cut a shape? I'm still really learning, but the good news is that the type of of patterns I design, which tend to be more like traditional patchwork, you're kind of limited, and most things are going to be made with squares or triangles, So
Sure.
once you learn how to write those types of diagrams, you're going to be a lot further ahead than what you would think you would be.
Right. Cause then it's at that point, it's like copy and paste certain things. Cause it's like once you know how
Right.
to make a half square triangle, that's how you make it all the time. Like,
Exactly, exactly. And I pattern tested so extensively
mm,
um, for the last couple of years that I just have a lot of familiarity with patterns and how they're written,
yeah.
so using that knowledge also helped me guide me on what I needed to learn.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that process is so interesting because I pattern tested for Katerina Rocella, like 5 different patterns. And, um, I mean, I obsess about her almost every episode. So she was really like my first, like she was the gateway to being obsessed with all of art gallery. But anyway, uh but yeah, seeing that behind the scenes process of here's the bones, like it's mostly good, but help me nitpick it to make it better. And it's like you can tell the difference between a pattern that's gone through that and a pattern that hasn't, or someone who's been through that process and someone who hasn't. Because when you've been on that other side of like literally editing a pattern versus just following it, it does give you a different insight to like why things are written a certain way or how things are laid out and how important it is for the order of things. And it's just
Mhm.
crazy how much goes into it. Yeah, if you don't write patterns, you don't really know like the work it takes.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and then also, yeah, without, if you're trying to write patterns without ever having been a pattern tester yourself,
Hmm.
um, you do, I think, miss out on some of those subtleties that you're talking about, like why, should you use a flying geese or should you use two half square triangles here?
Hmm.
As being a pattern tester that you're always going to want, the fewest seams possible, because it
Yes.
just all goes better. But if you've never really done a lot of pattern testing, you might think, oh, what does it matter? The design looks the same in the end,
Yeah.
and but to people who've tested extensively, like I did, like, I mean, during COVID, I was like everyone else, our quilting was an overload. And I
Yeah.
was probably pattern testing anywhere from 4 to 6 quilts a month. So I was pattern testing like an insane woman. So when it
Wow.
comes time now for me to write, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I didn't like how, that I remember the designer had to change that because it didn't work for people, so I
Hmm.
have this background of just sort of encyclopedic knowledge of best practices, I guess is the best way
Yeah.
to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important. And I'm I think I've probably ranted on here a bunch about it, but just the difference between a well-written pattern and one that's just not is somebody's like, well, I made this pattern and it's cool and I'm putting it on Etsy. It's like, oh, it's fine, but also you can cause a lot of frustration for your makers, and that's not fair to them. Like, if you're
Quilters
gonna,
are finicky. Quilters are finicky, we just are. I think it's just in our nature that we have a vision in our head and it's got to come out in real life. And I think that we also tend to be like, for me, um, I really am very careful about fabric requirements
mhm,
because I know, having pattern tested and buying fabric, that um, it's not fun when you have to go buy more, or you've bought way too much and you have all this waste. Like
Hmm.
that's something that as a pattern designer, I'm always really conscientious of. And I try to walk a line in the middle of
Yeah.
giving enough yardage that people, can maybe recut if they make a mistake, because goodness knows that happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Or, or, that they also, but also not so much that they feel like, man, I could have saved, $7 and not bought that extra half yard I didn't need.
Hmm.
So kind of being conscientious of that is important to me.
Yeah. I love that because yeah, it's been frustrating at times when, you know, I buy what I need for the pattern. I don't add any extras just because it's like, oh, I need 3/4 of a yard. I might as well get a yard. It's like I'll
Hmm.
try to stick to the amounts written. And yeah, the times when I've had to go back because made a bad cut, but then there wasn't even enough to like make an extra 2.5 inch strip versus
Yeah.
having, like you said, a whole half yard left over. Like if there's a few inches, that's great. My mom and I love to make scrap quilts and well,
Hmm.
I should say she loves to make scrap quilts because I see scraps and I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. And she's like, hold on, I have an idea. And she'll literally lay out an entire quilt in like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay.
Like you got skills, lady.
Oh no, she's crazy smart with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't, it's so fun to be around because it's just so inspiring. But anyway, so yeah, I love that you're being conscientious of that and keeping your makers in mind because I think sometimes getting lost in the process can make us forget about certain other aspects of whatever we're doing. And
Right.
so I think when you've been on multiple sides of whatever it is, if it's long arming, if it's writing patterns, if it's, making a quilt for someone, like having had experience on the other side of things is like really important. And I love that you pattern tested so much because I know the five I did, it was like crunch time all the time for me because I was trying to fit it in between jobs. And like I was, it was, I was full time quilting with my mom at that point, but it was like we were so busy with custom work that I was like sewing at midnight trying to get these things done. And
Yeah, I had plenty of those nights too. Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
crazy that you were able to do so many because I'm like, I was freaking out with just one at a time.
I was just obsessed, and it really was an outlet for me, to be doing something in the middle of COVID.
Hmm.
And but yeah, I remember I just, I think when you found your passion, it's just a lot easier to put in the time, because I remember talking to my husband and thinking like, you have to love it because it's too much work if you don't.
Yep.
And because I remember being up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, finishing a quilt because I had a deadline to meet. And but I also remember doing that and thinking, God, I love what I'm doing right now. Like I love that I'm able to do this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. It's like once you, yeah, realize that love for it, it's like, okay, this is something I want to do all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful I was able to, go full in on my business with my mom and go full in on this podcast. Like, it has been so fulfilling and so fun for me. Like, I loved
Mhm.
teaching, but then it broke me. And so I
And you
had
found
to
your
like,
next chapter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like crazy because I could never, I just think about past me, like back then, like I could not envision myself in this spot of like being a professional quilter. I mean, not that I'm
Oh
professional by
yeah.
any means, but like by profession, I'm a quilter. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a wild space to be in.
It is, it is. Like sometimes I'm like, like on paper, I shouldn't exist in this world, like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I think you understand. I think we always feel that way when we come into it a little bit later in life.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show that like what's meant for you isn't going to pass you by. Like whether
Hmm.
you start at 10 or 20, 30 or 40, whenever,
Hmm.
it's if you will find your passion,
Yeah.
and you will get so much fulfillment from it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I talked about this in my episode with Jenny about just like being open, like the openness to accept changes into your life and to accept the nuances of how things go and not being so hung up in the, what's wrong, quote unquote, but like finding the glimmers in all of it. And I think the more you can kind of be in that mindset, the easier it is to comprehend that you could be all these things. Like, I don't know if you read or know a lot about Brene Brown, but in
I've
her,
heard of her. Yeah.
yeah, I read her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, when I was 30, because I was a mess at that point in my life. But her whole thing was like, we don't have to pigeonhole ourselves. We don't have to like be only one thing. Humans are multifaceted, and she calls them slashies. So like, I'm a teacher slash quilter slash, entrepreneur slash Airbnb owner slash, it's like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can have all these things in my life. And it's just a matter of finding balance and putting energy into the things that, fulfill you. And so I think some people think, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, you could, just you maybe just don't want to, or whatever
Well,
it
yeah,
may
I mean, it
be.
could be that it's not their thing, you know.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that when you find it, you find this drive and this passion that you didn't know you had. Like I never thought
Yeah.
of myself as being somebody that was gonna really enjoy like owning my own business or working for myself. I never thought I had the creativity to design patterns. But
Right.
if you're willing to be open and like you said, like just open to it and take a chance,
Hmm.
and maybe you will fail, maybe you won't, but you'll never know if you never try,
Yeah.
and the way I see it is, if you're failing at something, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that it shows you you're not maybe on the right path, but it helps you get to your right path.
Right.
And and I say that because I was reading about the founder, I think of it's a big company of like shapewear that was really popular. His name is escaping me right now, but I guess she had like several businesses that failed,
Mm.
and before she got this one that became like a billionaire company or whatever.
Hmm.
And what she said was like, you just have to understand that failures, they're just kind of like helping you switch your path to get you to where you really need to go.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the attitude I take. It's like, yeah, I mean, sometimes I do things that I think are going to be a great idea and they just flop,
Hmm.
and that's okay. I mean, nobody's really keeping score in my opinion. And
Right.
if they are keeping score, so,
Right.
I'm
Well,
I'm not going to stop doing something just because I'm worried what someone else is going to say about it.
right. Right. Well, and if somebody's keeping score, it's about them and not you. Like,
Well, that's how I feel about it. So it's like, yeah, like sometimes I do stuff and it flops and it's like, oh, okay, that didn't work, but I won't try that again. I've
right.
learned now that that doesn't work.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think failing or struggling is such an important experience to have as a human, because if you never fail and never have to pick yourself up and never struggle, I mean, it doesn't have to be so hard, but if there isn't any struggle, that's like you don't grow, you don't change, you don't learn.
right.
And, coming from an educator's perspective, like I was preaching that to my kids all day, every day,
Yeah.
like you learn when you struggle and you make mistakes. Like I'm
Yeah.
here to help you, but unless you give it an effort and try, you're not going to
Mhm.
know what's on the other side of it, because you'll never learn it. And it's so hard, right? To sit in that
Mhm.
discomfort. And I think too, for little kids, especially, like they're used to somebody being there to comfort them when they're struggling. But in that
Right.
learning space, it's like, and yep, that is hard. I'm so happy that you're trying though. Like, it's like I
Right.
had to craft my language carefully, but then I have to talk to myself that way sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, because you're right. We don't want to be uncomfortable, and there's a vulnerability that comes with, putting yourself out there, and
Yeah.
especially when you're chasing a dream, and then maybe feel like, oh gosh, like, well, my engagement's down, or my growth isn't what I thought it'd be, or,
Yeah.
I asked a question and nobody answered, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens, it happens.
Hmm.
And, but I just try to remind myself that like whatever doesn't work, now I've learned that that doesn't work.
Hmm.
And, the most important thing that I always try to do is I try lots of different things that I think would be fun for my audience, but if they don't like it, um, you know, I don't mind if they don't like it as long as I've stayed true to myself,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
Like that's my barometer. It's like I'll try, talking about different things or different subjects and seeing what hits or what, people want to talk about,
Hmm.
but I'm never going to bring up something that's not authentically me, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why I don't mind, like, in some ways, if people don't resonate. So it's like, okay, well, that's just something that, I want them to see the real me. And the real me isn't perfect. The real me makes mistakes.
Yeah.
So they can see that, you can go on my Instagram and see, like, oh, yeah, like, this post had 50 likes. This one had 500. This one
Right.
didn't do
Yeah.
so well for her,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
you
oh,
know? Yeah,
yeah.
hey, man, it happens. But I just don't. I always tell like I when I was doing my business courses where people could work with me and I'd be their sort of their mentor and help them with their, one of the biggest pieces of advice I always say is just don't get discouraged. Like
Mm.
if this is your dream, just keep going. Just
Yeah.
keep going. Like don't be discouraged, because if I stopped every time, I was discouraged or could have been discouraged, I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at now. And I'm really happy with where I'm at. I'm not the biggest person in the world, obviously, on Instagram, but I've carved out a little community
Hmm.
of quilters and I really have bonded with them. And that means more to me than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something so special that I think when you find your people who love what you're doing and support you, you know, no matter what, and because you're being your authentic self, like that feels so good. And, you know, we can't possibly like or be a part of every person's life in this whole wide world. So the fact that you get
No.
to have like a chunk of people that really do like what you're putting out there, like that feels so special.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy and excited when people reach out. Like I love when people feel comfortable enough to do that and share their stories with me. That really means a lot to me. And it's one of the big reasons why I keep putting in the work, because I
Yeah.
love the reward.
Mhm. Absolutely. I know I still like after all this time, I mean, it's not been that long, almost 2 years, but every time I get like a comment on a YouTube on one of the episodes or somebody leaves a review, I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening." Like I still have to pinch myself. And I think, even with the business, like with the my quilting business, like I think there's just certain things that happen and my mom and I will just like start jumping up and down because we're so excited that this little thing happened. And maybe it's little in the grand scheme of things, but to us it's everything. And it's like,
Right.
we've we've got our like our usual suspects for long arm clients, and it's just so fun to see them. And like they've been along the journey with us, watching us evolve too, from like working in my mom's basement in their old house to moving to the house they're in now, and me coming on full time instead of just part time, and learning to trust me. Cause I think that was the other part of it, is like entering my personality into the mix when my mom had already built these relationships with people. They were kind of
Yeah.
wary of me, like, well, I don't know you. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm cool. So
Like I'm her daughter. I'm just good. She can vouch for me.
yeah. And she's like, oh, this is my daughter. And they're like, oh, that's cute. Do you work here? I'm like, yes, I'm actually co-owner with her. They're like, oh, I'm like, mm-hmm. No, it's fine. Everybody's been great, but it was just like an interesting transition. And even still, occasionally we'll have clients that really my mom has only dealt with, and I've maybe seen them once or twice, and they'll come over and they're like, "Oh, hi." And I'm like, "Hi, like I'm going to be taking your quilt in today, whatever." And it weirds them out for a minute, but then they're fine. It's just like interesting to experience like those ups and downs. And like you said, like try not to get discouraged by it. Cause I think at first it was really like, oh my gosh, they don't trust me. They don't like me, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm doing this. I'm like, my presence is here and, I run all of our socials. And so any posts or anything like that's my personality. Like
Yeah.
I'm the
That's great,
one
because I'm sure you and your mother have complemented each other, and she's brought her skills and you're bringing your skills.
for sure.
And that collaboration is helping you take your businesses to the next level. And I just think that's what I love about the quilting community is that, the collaborations,
Hmm.
are just always fantastic, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I've always counted myself so lucky to have my mom and all of her skills and just getting to work side by side with her. And then my three best friends quilt. And so it's like I've already had like a built-in community of people and, talking with Emily of Peach and Honey Studio, she's like, I'm just by myself. Like, and I have my
Yeah.
online people, but I don't have anybody in person. And I'm like, man, that would be so hard. Like, ugh. Anyway, but yeah, like that's why I started this podcast. And that's why I'm like try to bring my full self to whatever I do. So if people resonate, then they can find a space to build more community and feel free to, reach out or be themselves and in a space where maybe they don't feel that way otherwise. But
Mhm.
it's fun to be able to create that. Like I know some people are like, oh, social media, but and parasocial relationships aren't as fulfilling as like in-person relationships, but I think it also opens up the a globalized view of what you're doing, because if you don't
Oh, sure.
necessarily have a lot of resources around you to
Right.
see what other people are doing in this craft that you love, well, now you have the internet, it's like you've got
Hmm.
Instagram and you can spend hours and hours looking at what other people are doing if you
Right,
so
for sure.
choose.
It's
But
true.
yeah, it's great. But what was I going to ask you? Oh, so how many patterns have you designed so far?
I have designed 3 patterns, and I've got a fourth one that should be releasing in September.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is like the first like this was one that I had designed earlier, but I knew it was going to be a little bit more time, it was going to take me more time to write.
Hmm.
So I've been kind of putting it off, and now I'm like, okay, I it won't take me, 30 minutes to draw a simple diagram now. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can do this. I can do this now. I have the knowledge now to write this pattern, because before it was
Yeah.
just an idea in my mind, and now I'm like, okay, now I know how to write this in a way that will help others make it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so fun. Well, and it's cool that you had that like idea in your pocket and you knew that you wanted to do it, like, and you
Yeah.
got yourself to a place where you felt comfortable, like being able to put it out in the world. Like, that's really cool.
No, thank you. Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. I've loved all my patterns. I guess it is almost like having kids. Like, I don't know if you can pick a favorite, right? Like each one I
Right.
make, I'm like, oh, this one's my favorite. And then I make my next one, I'm like, oh no, this one is. And
Mm.
but they all just have a special place in my heart, because
Yeah.
you're making them, and it's also just me knowing the personal journey and education and everything that I've had to achieve to get to each level of, it's just they become very meaningful to me.
Yeah, of course. It's a labor of love and something that,
Mhm.
it is meaningful. It's coming out of your brain and your creativity. And it's like a love letter to the makers who choose to make your quilts. Like,
Oh, absolutely. That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah. It
I
is.
just,
That's exactly how I feel.
yeah. Oh, I just have nothing but gratitude and admiration for pattern writers. Like, I don't know if it's something I'll ever do because I just don't know that it's my thing. But like I said, having tested and just having made so many different types of patterns, like I can tell when it is a love letter. Like you can tell the difference, like that those attention to detail and like the little things that just make one pattern better than the other as far as like the ease. of following it and reading it and seeing the diagrams and the cuts and everything, like you feel good making it versus like, what the hell is this pattern even trying to say? Like,
Right. It's like, I'm like, what color am I looking at again? I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
remember.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fun. So you said you have a daughter. Do you have any other kids?
I do. So my daughter is 19, she's in college, and then my son is 7 and he'll be going into the first grade.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, he'd been homeschooled the last couple of years. He has autism.
Okay.
He has what would have formerly been called Asperger's.
Hmm.
So we kept him home while we kind of navigated that diagnosis and, figured out the best ways to support him. But this year we're going to give it a go. And, he's met with a lot of the staff at the school, and um, he's someone who tries really hard,
Hmm.
so we're gonna give it a go and see how he does, and um, be ready to pivot if we need to. But I'm really hopeful that he'll have a good school year, and
Yeah.
that'll give me. I'm gonna see about volunteer opportunities at the school, things like that.
Yeah. That's fun. Like,
Yeah.
I think school can be, I mean, as a former teacher, I it can be a kind of up in the air for the first couple years, but I think, if as long as he feels supported and is getting his needs met, like school can be magic. It can also be
Oh,
a place where
absolutely.
maybe he'll flourish because he's getting some social interaction that he needs, or it's like you never know
Yeah.
what the thing is going to be, but hopefully it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, like all moms, like you your job is just to try to figure out what's best
Mhm.
and then, carry it out. I felt like homeschooling was the best when we were doing it. Now I'm thinking he could benefit, from being at school. And, if I see him thriving and flourishing, like you say, well, then I know we've made the right decision.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for him. I'm very excited for him.
Yeah. That's so cool. And what a big gap. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
judging because there's huge gaps in my family too. Like I'm 15 years older than my baby sister. So like I totally get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's a 12-year gap. I always tell people, like, I went back to the starting line. Silly me.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it. I mean, I wouldn't trade it because, having been a mom, I had my daughter when I was 25,
Hmm.
and it was just kind of a everyday, like, then her father and I divorced, so I was kind of like a single mom for a long time. And it was just always her and I, and it was just kind of like I was surviving,
Hmm.
like every day
Hmm.
was just surviving and getting through it. And now with him, I got remarried a few years ago, almost 10 years ago now.
Hmm.
And then we had him, and I'm so much more aware of how quickly the time goes.
Yeah.
So I think it helps me be really, really present
Hmm.
in a way that I wasn't able to be for my daughter because I was still growing as a person myself at that point.
Right. Like you're still
And
essentially a child at 25. Like,
you are, you're very different, 25, 35, 45. Those 10-year gaps make a big difference.
yeah.
And so, yeah, like I just appreciate it so much more. And I mean, and my time with her as well. I think
Hmm.
it's all my perspective on all of it has shifted. And I've just realized you just have to be as aware of it because you never know when the last time you're doing something for them is going to be the last time because now they don't need you to wash their hair. Now they
Hmm.
don't need you to hold their hand to cross the street.
Yeah.
Like there's just all these little moments that, will slip past you if you're
Hmm.
not aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that conscious living of like when you're in survival mode like that, like, with your daughter, you can't really pause to appreciate those little moments because you're just trying to like make it to the next day. You're just trying to make it to the next
Mhm.
minute of like, yeah, surviving and there's very real, mental and emotional ramifications to that and like so being able to come away from that and and be more present and be more conscious of what's around you, who's with you, who's around you. Like
Mhm.
it's a gift really, like that we can give ourselves. It's just it's hard to get there.
It's really hard. I feel like in some ways we're not designed to do that. You know, we're designed to keep moving forward, and sometimes you have to stand still.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
you would think it's easy to do, but it's not, you know, and
Yeah.
usually it only comes through just these big life changes
Hmm.
where you start to realize that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that we're just so conditioned to like stuff the feelings, like just keep going, like it doesn't matter, just tough it out when like and maybe societally that's what we've created, but I don't think by design or by nature that's how we're supposed to be, you know.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think we were designed for softer living, but we've created this monster of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Hustle, hustle, hustle.
yeah, hustle, more is
Yeah.
more kind of thing. And I
Mm.
always say I'm trying to live the soft life, but it's hard to
It
not
is.
feel
And I
like
mean, you know, and I think there's seasons too, you
mhm,
know. I mean,
absolutely.
you know, there's seasons like when I had my daughter, that was a season of needing to just maybe be more fixated on getting through a day.
Yeah.
Now I'm more able to slow down, and like with our quilting journeys, yeah, there's those moments when we're making quilts at midnight, and then there's just
Mhm.
going to be those seasons where you're like, I'm slowing down, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
We just have to
Yeah.
listen to those instincts.
Yeah, exactly. Like listening to yourself and honoring yourself and your body and like what it's trying to tell you is it's hard to do, but I think it's crucial in any space in your life where it's parenting or, you
Hmm.
know, running a business or even in yeah, just in your hobbies and crafts. Like if your back hurts, go lay down or, you know, it's like don't just push through
Right.
the pain because you feel like you have to get something done or I don't know. I I have had to work really hard on, you know, listening to myself, listening to my body, giving myself space and time when I need it. Cause I used to just, I can tough it out. I can tough it out. I can tough it out and be really hard on myself if I took time off or if I needed a break. And yeah, it can just be so tricky, but it's
Yeah.
cool that you were able to take the time to homeschool your son and give him that time and attention. And, you know, getting a diagnosis like that can be so tricky and knowing
Yeah.
how to handle it because each person is like even if they have that diagnosis he's still his own self and
Right.
you know he is his own human being in his own right and so it's just learning about his intricacies and his needs that you know
Right.
I think that's so cool that you were able to give him that time so
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm
yeah
really grateful I was able to.
yeah that's really cool do he and your daughter get along really well
You know, it's funny because even though they have a 12-year age gap, they do still tend to bicker like a brother and sister would. And I'm like, why are
yeah
you two bickering? You know, like they'll be like, I was sitting there. Well, I was sitting there first. I'm like,
hmm
it's a 19-year-old and a 7-year-old, and here they are bickering, you know, but siblings are siblings. It doesn't matter what the age difference is.
yeah that's the truth that's I'm still like, "Wow, there's that shirt you stole out of my closet," to my sister. Like, "Cool, I've
It's
been
so
looking for that
true.
for 3 years." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm gonna punch you in the face."
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's still the same thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So you said she's an illustration student. Has she shown any interest in quilting at all, or is she doing her
She
own
shows interest in everything. She is
Mm,
definitely she loves to do things, but she's actually more into I would say she does more knitting,
mm.
than she does sewing. But she'll, you know, she knows how to use a sewing machine, and she will make little things sometimes, but she prefers, knitting and drawing and things like that. But she's very
Yeah.
talented and she can do whatever she sets her mind to. She's always, you know, sometimes it's calligraphy, sometimes it's, you know, um, she got into making her own yarn for a while, you know, and then
Ooh,
she's just really, you know, she's doing like leather, like learning how to bind books with leather. And so
wow.
she's really, really, really creative, and she's just good at everything she does. She's like the opposite of me, where it was like everything I did was bad except for like one thing. Her, it's like everything is good. So
Ugh,
funny.
Isn't that just so frustrating?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm so like proud of her and supportive. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, I just tell her, I'm like, oh, I wish I could do some of what you do because I have all these ideas in my head and I can't like execute them,
Hmm.
and just the comment. It's like too many quilts, or so many quilts, so little time. It's kind of that
Yeah.
way with crafts in general for me. Like I would love to try everything once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same, but yeah, I'm just like, I'm not good at a lot of things, but our youngest, he's 18 and he is just like so naturally talented at like, especially when it comes to like sports, like physicality. I'm just like, people are like, "Oh, does he?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know where he came from. Like, he's just good at stuff. I don't know. Like,
They
it's
just sometimes they're just
crazy.
they're just talented that way. That's what
Yeah.
makes it so cool.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like, okay, if you would just put in a little more effort into things. No, he's on that side. I'm like, just try harder. And he's like, I don't want to. I'm like, but you're already so good at it. He's like, I know. So why should I have to try hard? I'm like, oh my God. No, he's so smart. And he's, like I said, he's so good at like anything sports wise or like physical. Like, he just has such good like hand-eye coordination. Like, it's crazy. But
Wow.
you're just like, wow, I trip looking at a stair. So, I mean, it's cool. It's fine.
That's funny.
Yeah. Um, do you okay, so you said you have a pattern coming out in September. So what was the pattern called that you released with your socialite bundle?
Um, so the Socialite bundle, I wrote a free runner pattern. It's a bejeweled runner. And my upcoming pattern that one's coming out in September, I'm
Mhm.
calling it the Hesper quilt. Um,
Okay.
that one will also be featuring my bundle
Okay.
as well. Yeah, so this will be the second pattern I've written to use my bundle in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said you had the plan for a while. So what inspired your new quilt?
Well, it was partly like I had the design in my mind, but I had it in like a different colorway.
Mhm.
And then I started looking at it and I'm like, I really think this would work well with my beloved bundle.
Mhm.
And so I did a mock-up and I was like, yes, we're gonna go with that. But I've just in terms of like the design itself, I love star blocks. Like I love
Mhm.
patchwork quilts. So and anything with the sawtooth star, Lemoyne star, any type of star block, I'm in love with. And so I wanted to write a pattern that incorporated a star block and then my other favorite block is an Irish chain. I just love an
Mm.
Irish chain quilt. So
Mhm.
I've sort of have combined the two elements to create my own pattern. But it was all just about kind of like a nod to my bundle, which is a lot of my favorite fabrics with my and also not to my favorite blocks. And I've sort of combined them all into one thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. How special that that all came together. Like, that's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah. So, like, what was your reaction? Does Art Gallery reach out to you to be like, do they invite you to be a socialite or do you apply? Like, how does that work?
There was an application process.
Okay.
So, I applied for it and yeah, and then got a call, which was like this like a dream come true. I mean,
Yeah.
again, with somebody with my background, like I came in with no connections,
Mhm.
no knowledge of, you know, quilting prior to when I started to teach myself. And so it was just like amazing that I would even get a call like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was really exciting.
That is so exciting. It's like, oh, who, me?
Yeah, I know. I was like, yes, because I've
But
been such a fan of like I have been such a fan of their fabrics for so long.
yeah.
Like when I started quilting, um, I started quilting using fabrics that my mother-in-law had given me, and they were scrap fabrics that she didn't use, so they were covered in frogs or they had beach balls on them, and
Yeah.
that's how I learned. And so I would see these beautiful fabrics and be like, oh, maybe someday I'll buy some. And
Hmm.
so, and then when I first felt Art Gallery Fabrics, I fell in love with how different they felt from anything else I had been
Hmm.
using. And I was just like hooked. So, you know, I feel like it has been kind of this little love story between me and Art Gallery Fabrics that
Yeah.
was happening in my own mind. And so when they called me, it was like, oh, maybe they feel the same about me.
Yeah.
So it was a nice confirmation, because like I said, I'd always used their fabrics and loved
Hmm.
them so much. So it was so great to feel that like affirmation, that
Hmm.
they wanted me on their team.
Yeah. That's so cool and so brave of you to just like jump in there. And I think, just like you said, you never know unless you try. And maybe
Mhm.
if they didn't choose you, it's like, okay, well, I tried. And instead of going to bed at night being like, oh, I should have just submitted an application, you can know that you did it. And maybe it just wasn't the right timing and you can do it again later. It's like
Right.
one of those things where instead of getting discouraged, whatever, but you got the good result that you wanted. So, the
Yeah.
what ifs came didn't need to come because you got it. So
Yeah.
that's so cool. I probably would have freaked out if I was, on your end. Like, oh my God.
I cried a little bit. I cried a little bit because, it's just, the things aren't always easy,
Yeah.
and Instagram can be deceiving that way. You can
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, like it's all comes so easy, or, oh, this isn't hard. And it's like, no, but there's been a lot of hard things that have happened too,
Yeah.
and so, and the day that I got the call was actually ironically a day where I started thinking to myself, like, am I on the right path here? Like, am
Mm-hmm.
I maybe not meant to be doing this anymore? I'd had to close my fabric shop because I wanted to concentrate on my son. And,
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of didn't know where I fit in anymore without owning a fabric shop. And I started thinking, well, maybe it's just time for me to go away. Maybe it's just time for me to shift modes and do something completely different. And I was really discouraged that day.
Yeah.
And so when I got that, message that they wanted to talk to me about it, and then I got on the phone, like I did cry a little bit because it was like a sign for me that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like there is still a place for me here, even without owning a fabric shop anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a little nudge to get back on the path.
Yeah. The quiltyverse was like, don't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's like stay right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't leave us. Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I love that. Like, that gives me the tingles because it's just like when little
Oh,
things like that happen, it's just like magic.
it
Obviously,
is.
like wherever people stand with it, but I just feel like there's bigger forces at work. And when we put energy into something and really truly love it and care about it, like good things do keep happening. And maybe one door closes, but another one opens right there for you. You just have to step through it,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And
Yeah,
so that's
that's
really
true.
cool.
Yeah,
So
and that's why
how
my first pattern is called open window, because I said window closed and then something else opened, yeah, window
yeah,
opened for me, so
yeah. And that's such a cute pattern. Like
oh, thank you.
I was like, dang, I want to make one right now.
You probably could, it's so fast and easy. I made it especially just so it could be quick and easy, like perfect baby quilt,
Mhm.
so that you can churn out really quickly.
Yeah. Lord knows I have enough fabric. I could probably make 10, but
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, this is on my list to make. Like, I really like this. It's so cute. It'd be fun. But so like how long are you socialite for a year? Or like how long does the process go for?
Yep, it's like a one-year contract. So,
Okay.
so I'll be around for the next few months. We started in March, so
Okay.
I'll
Yep.
be through next March, and then we'll see where I go from there. I'll have to wait for another door to open at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
And will they keep like manufacturing your bundles? Is that going to be a thing or will they stop or, are they done
You
when
know,
you're done?
that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I'm assuming they're probably gone when we are, but
Mhm.
you know what they say about assuming, so I'm not gonna assume.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
if it becomes like a limited edition thing because 'cause they're no longer made, then it's like things change.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone wants, like, limited edition stuff, that's the best. I love limited edition fabrics, I'll scoop them up right away.
Yeah, I know. I was, like, looking through my bin because my mom and I, we use the big, like, Rubbermaid totes to store our fabrics underneath our long arm, and we have some personal bins, but then we have our, our bins for sweet pea and stuff we can pull from if we're just trying to supplement fabrics in you know, a memory quilt or something, but,
Mhm,
um, anyway, in my bin, I used to be part of the Fat Quarter Shop quarterly booster, which was uh, it was cotton and steel, and then it changed to Ruby Star. Um, but you get 12 fat quarters every quarter and a matching spool of thread and a pattern.
mhm,
And it was like
mhm.
$45 and it was like a really great deal, honestly. But um I had to stop because I was getting so many and I literally have only made one pattern. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I still have like 8 or 9 of the bundles, but I'm like, these are like OG cotton and steel, like Ruby Star. I'm like, these are
Yeah,
big money right now. And same with Tula. Like I have a lot of the original print Tula stuff that she's now doing Deja Vu, you know,
yeah,
prints of. And I'm like, dang, like sitting on like highly sought after fabric, but I'm not willing to part with it because I still want to use it. you know,
right.
like
Yeah,
how
I
do I
know.
sort
And
through it? And
that's always the dilemma when you've got something like that.
mhm.
Keep it for me or you make some money off of it. I think most of us keep it for ourselves.
Yeah, honestly, because I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not interested in trying to make somebody pay extra money for something when,
I know it feels wrong, doesn't it?
right?
I know
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to do, but I feel like it's like I feel like I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'd feel like I'd have to be like, "Well, this is what I paid, so this is what you should pay."
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, I couldn't see myself charging somebody that much, but I understand why. And I'm not like
Oh,
disparaging anybody
absolutely.
who does, but it's like,
Mhm.
I also bought the fabric because I love it. And
Yeah.
before it
I
was a
think
collector's item.
yeah, I just think that I mean, I always feel like they're just probably better business people than I am, you know what I mean? They
Right.
know how to turn a profit, and I more power to them. I think it's savvy, but
Mm.
I just don't think I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same. I'm like, I will make something with Nightshade. I will make something with, you know, all these like
Yeah,
Tula bundles I still have. But yeah, anyway, it's fun to have those things because they're meaningful. Not just like I mean to yourself, obviously, if you're hanging on to it, you must like it, but then also knowing that it's like a meaningful piece of fabric out there in the quilting world and kind of
yeah,
feels special to be like, oh, I have some. Like,
yeah, it is. It's so special when you cut into it. You gotta save it for just the right project, you know? It can't just be anything. It has to
yeah.
be the perfect thing because 'cause you're gonna cut into it. It's so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah. That's exactly why I haven't cut into so much of it because I'm like terrified to hate the quilt I make with it. So it's fine. I did use my All Stars bundle and I didn't cut anything. I literally just sewed the fat quarters together and left the selvages and everything because I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
I can't bring myself to cut it up. And I
Yeah.
long armed it yesterday and it's really cute. So I'm happy. But
Yeah.
I know with my other stuff, I will make quilts. It's just finding the thing that speaks to me that says, this is exactly right for that fabric.
Exactly, and you'll know it when you see it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's how it's been a handful of bundles I've had. Like I've talked about it, but my Esoterra bundle from Katerina Rochella, like she
Mhm, mhm.
put that out forever ago and I bought it all when it was out and I'm so grateful I did because it's really hard to find now, but that was like the first pattern I tested with her was when I finally used it and it was perfect for it because one of the prints is those like just triceratops heads and
Okay.
there's some fussy cut or you could fussy cut it, but there's some squares in the blocks that go along the top and the bottom of the quilt and then right in the center. And they were perfect because you needed to cut 2.5-inch squares, and a 2.5-inch square fit perfectly around those heads to give you like
Oh,
a quarter
nice.
inch seam around the heads. And I was like, it was meant to be.
There you go. You see it always, you'll always know. You'll always
Yeah.
know. It's like when they say you're gonna know the right wedding dress or whatever. Like you'll know the right quilt pattern when you see it.
Yep. You will. It's funny. And sometimes it just takes longer, but it will pop up.
Mhm.
It will happen. So keep hanging on to that
Exactly.
fabric.
That's right.
I'm like simultaneously trying to be like, I need to be more mindful and I need to be like more scrap friendly and, use less or keep less. And then I'm like, at the same time, like, no, don't get rid of anything because you never know when you're going to
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I will I always tell people like I'm never gonna say don't buy fabric. I might say, be smart about the fabric you're buying,
Yeah.
but never, I mean, like if it's something that brings you joy and it's something that, is supporting your hobby,
Hmm.
you know, you wouldn't tell a baseball player like don't invest in your sport,
Yeah. You don't need a
Like,
bat.
yeah, don't worry about the bat. Oh, that old mitt, it's just gonna work just fine, I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to work at a professional level of something, you need to invest in
Hmm.
yourself and your craft, and I don't see it any different. Like if you're a woodworker, you're going to
Hmm.
buy the right tools,
Yeah.
or if yeah, you work with like leather crafts, you're going to get all the right tools. You're not going to be like, well, I can use a screwdriver for this,
Right. Yeah.
So that's how I see it with quilting. Like, can you get by with other things like, do you really need a ruler? Do you really need a rotary cutter? I mean, women before didn't use them, no,
Yeah.
you probably don't really need them. But if you're making 4 quilts a month or something like I was, like you want to have the best tools because it's
Hmm.
going to make your job easier and safer.
Right. Yeah. And it's like we've made all these technological improvements and created new tools in the quilty and sewing space because the old ways were so hard and slow. If you think about
Right.
how long it used to take people to make a quilt because of the hand cutting and the hand sewing and the it's like we don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
And like, yeah, you can get by if you absolutely have to with the bare minimum, like scissors and no ruler. But,
Hmm.
yeah, just like you're saying, if you want to get into it and be, making and be more precise, then like, yeah, there's tools for that. And you can get those tools for inexpensive. It doesn't have to be like the top of the line everything at first. And,
No, no,
you
you
know,
invest as you go, I didn't buy
mhm,
fabric for the longest time because I knew that I was making too many mistakes. I was just gonna like hate myself for ruining a piece of expensive fabric,
right.
And
Yeah.
then as I got, got more practice and got more comfortable, then I started buying more expensive fabric,
Hmm.
and as I started cutting more fabrics, I'm like, well, I need a bigger cutting mat now, so
Yeah.
you just do those upgrades as you can. But,
Hmm.
I do think uh I used to, I think, feel guilt. And then now I just see it as like, you know what, this is my chosen hobby. My husband is
Right.
a diver. He's
Mm,
not, he dove, professionally, and he was a scuba diver instructor and stuff like that. Like he never apologizes for buying the best equipment. You
right.
know, you buy what you need. And so and he was actually the one that really made me stop feeling that way.
Hmm.
'Cause he framed it to me just like that. He goes, "I don't apologize for buying what I need for my craft. Like, why should you apologize for buying for yours?"
Yeah.
Of course, then he sees the box of fabric coming in, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
He's like, actually,
And I was like, "Hey, I deserve it." No, but I mean, but seriously, like, you
yeah.
do have to let go of some of that guilt, especially if it's something that you really wanna be doing, beyond just maybe one quilt a year or something, then
Yeah.
invest, and if you're just at the level, that I was at initially where I was just doing one here or there, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
need to buy everything, but it helps the more you do.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I always say, like, you don't need a lot of tools, but you need the right ones if you want to make a good quilt, if you want
Mhm.
your time to be well spent and to it's not easy, but to like make it easier and, less mistakey, I guess, because
Yeah. Well,
it
it's just there's just different there's just different levels, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think, I had someone comment on something I posted saying like uh it was not a negative comment, but she was just saying like, oh, I think, perfection in quilting is overrated. And
Mm.
I thought to myself like, absolutely. Like if the fear of being perfect is stopping you from making, you need to let that go,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's totally fine to make mistakes. It's okay that nothing I've made mistakes on quilts before and people have like messaged me like you made a mistake on this quilt and I'm like,
Yeah,
thanks for telling me, you know.
yeah.
But now that it's too late and I can't fix it, I appreciate it.
Right,
But at the same time, like I do think that when you really love something, you do want to do it to the best of your ability,
right.
and that calling isn't for everybody, for some people they don't mind it, like there's plenty of things that I do that I'm like that's good enough. It's done
Right.
and that's good enough.
Yeah.
But for quilting, it's just something where I just have a lot of passion for it and commitment to it that I'm like, you know what? Like I do it doesn't have to be like this every time, but I
Mhm,
want to know how to do it right.
mhm.
And maybe that
Yeah.
comes from me being self-taught. Maybe there's a little bit more of that pressure of like,
Mm.
I really want to know how to do this right. But I'm never gonna stop, I'm not gonna let fear of something being imperfect stop me from making.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a little challenge to myself, like, hey, remember when my points never matched up? Guess what? Now they do, you know?
Yeah. Now my stuff has points, like
Right, right. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm like, so for me, it's like it's my own like I compete against myself.
Mhm.
I guess is what I'm trying to say. I
Yeah.
compete against myself. Like, can I improve that? But I never want anyone to feel like, oh well, I'm never gonna have that time to invest, so I'm just gonna not do it. No, do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, do it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm in that space too of like, do the quilting how you wanna do it, like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna judge you, I hope you don't judge me, like, I'm like you where I'm gonna have spots where I'm like, "It's fine, I'll let that go," and then there's times where I'm gonna, you know, be more of a perfectionist depending on what part of the process it is, but I think when you have the right tools and the right setup, like, again, it doesn't need to be the top of the line everything to do that, but you just give yourself the best shot of, like, making less mistakes or having an easier time putting everything together because if you're cutting more accurately, then your piecing is going to be more accurate. When your piecing's more accurate, your quilts are more square. And when they're more square, they're way easier to quilt or long arm and like
Right, right, and even, like, ergonomics, like, when I
mhm.
had my fabric shop, like, when I originally started, I had just this little table, I was, like, basically cutting on the kitchen table,
Mm,
and I tell you what, my neck and shoulders were killing me,
yeah.
and I was, spending hours and hours on my feet cutting fabric, and finally I was like, "Okay, you know what? I need an anti-fatigue mat. I need a cutting table that can accommodate the bolts of fabric," and
Mhm.
so I invested in that, and my shoulders and neck thanked me, so it's just again, if you're cutting fabric once a year,
Yeah.
do you need a table like that? No,
No.
only if you want one.
Right.
But as you start to move, if you're doing it for a business, your needs change.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we happened to find this one of those like electric desks that you can like it can turn into like a stand-up desk or whatever, but it was like
Hmm.
super clearanced out because like the side panel was coming off and the top was broken. And my dad was like, "Well, I can just build you guys a new top and like we can put that side panel back on." So for like $100, we got this, you know, height adjustable table that we built a custom sized topper for. And now it's perfect for our cutting mat. And, we can cut our fabric nicely and put it exactly to the height that we need it for,
Hmm.
anti-fatigue reasons. And like, my mom and I are tall-ish, we're 5'7" and 5'8", but then it's like one of my best friends who quilts with us, she's like 5'2", so she needs everything as low as possible.
Shorter.
And but then
Yeah,
my
I'm
other
more
2
in that
friends are
category.
yeah. Well, then my other two friends are like 5'10" and 6 foot. So then they need to raise everything up like way higher
Yeah.
than, it's like, it's just funny. But yeah, you think about those little things like what's going to save your body and give you the most longevity. And, you
Mhm.
know, it's ultimately up to each quilter. But I think perfectionism is hard to battle. And, especially in quilting, you can let the mistakes go, but then it's like at the end of the day, if you look at your final product, are you proud of it? Are you proud of what you made? And it doesn't matter if anybody else is, but like, are you looking at those mistakes and going, ugh, I should have taken the extra 30 seconds to line that up better? Or you can always challenge yourself to do a little bit better next time and increase your accuracy, because I think ultimately we're trying to make beautiful things and they're not always going to be perfect, and perfection is for the birds. But I at, at the end of the day, I just want to look at what I made and be proud of the effort I put into it and not look at it and go, ugh, I should have, XYZ.
Right,
And
right. Well, and I mean, and having, been self-taught, like, I
mhm,
have a lot of quilts that I made early on before I had the skill level, it wasn't at the skill level maybe that I needed to be at. And, though they never turned into quilts, right? Because they were so bad, they wouldn't line up, they were all crooked, it
yeah.
was really just, I mean, it was good that I did them because I did learn through the process.
Mhm.
But, my goal is, to make a quilt. And, if it never turns into a quilt, well, I didn't really reach my goal. But again, those steps in the middle are what get you there.
Mhm.
Nobody goes from not knowing how to use a sewing machine to making beautiful advanced level quilts. Like we all
Right.
are learning. And so, for me, I always just want, you know, I would hope that 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 I'm being aspirational. Like I never want to come across as being like, oh, like I just my points always line up because
Yeah.
it's a total lie,
Yeah.
they don't always line up, but when I do get them lined up, I'm pretty excited because I know how much work it's taken for me to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just made a simple patchwork quilt for a client, and it was honestly such a cool idea. Like, it was for her boyfriend, and he wanted a square for each patch that he collects from visiting all 63 national parks.
Oh wow.
And so obviously I made like a 7 by 9, just like 5-inch squares, and then put some borders on it, because just to keep it simple. But like all of my seams lined up, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I could not believe it. I was just like, I kept staring at it like, wait, did I really do that? Because, every once in a while, it's like maybe one or two is off and they don't line up exactly correctly. And it's not at the end of the world. But this one, I was like, what the heck? Like, I actually did it.
Yeah. Well, it's like getting a hole in one or something, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we should be proud of ourselves, like,
Hmm.
because again, it's taken us a lot of work to get there, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I swear by like web string, like chain piecing. Like, I don't know if you've done that, but
I haven't done it. I've done chain piecing, but I've
yeah.
never done the web, and I'm like, it looks a little intimidating to me, but
Yeah.
I have to give it a try one of these days.
Yeah. I've just recently started practicing it. Like, I don't know if it was on my son's quilt. I don't remember. I literally just this spring tried it for the first time, because I was like, it used to terrify me. But once I figured it out, I was like, oh my God. And Susie Quilts has like the best tutorial on it. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, Susie's speaking to me. I can do this. Like, um, I think for bigger projects, it's a little trickier. Like the quilt I'm making for our youngest, it was supposed to be for his graduation, but here we are in August. And um it's gonna be huge, like 80 by 90. And
Wow.
um so I think doing it in chunks for that one is gonna be my best bet, like making quadrants essentially. But yeah, for that patchwork, it was just like you just like take the first two columns and like sandwich them together, and you chain piece those, and then you just grab the next column and like open up what you just sewed, and then chain piece that to what was there. And like you don't cut anything, you leave it all chain
Yeah.
pieced in columns, and then you just have to like You just iron them and then you keep flipping the layers together to like sew the horizontal seams. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's like I'm saying it that way, like, it's so easy because I've done it now, so I know what I'm talking about, but, like, when you haven't done it, it did not make sense to me for the longest time, so
Yeah.
I
I
don't
I
know.
mean, I've seen photos of people, and I see the reels on Instagram, and I mean, I think it's so cool, I just
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, you're like you're saying, there's probably a little bit of a learning curve, and then once you
Mhm.
get it, you've got it.
Yeah.
But it's like
You have to, like,
sometimes
plan for
you
it.
don't have the time, to do the
Yeah.
learning curve. It's like I just need to get the quilt finished.
Yeah.
Now is
Yeah.
not the time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the next time I've got the right time and I've got the right project. I do wanna
Mhm.
try I just love to try everything. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
a I initially would always be really scared of trying something new. Like,
me
when the
too.
very first time I learned to try curves, I was like, like, "What can I do it?"
Mhm.
And now I find that I just like to try it, I may
Yeah.
end up not liking it, but I still like to try it.
Yeah. At least you can try it and say you know you don't like it versus being like, "I don't think I'll like it,"
Right.
or you think you won't like it, you try it, and then you end up actually really loving it, it's like you won't know unless you
Yeah,
try,
right.
and,
Yeah.
you
That's
know
exactly it. That's the way it was with foundation paper piecing with me.
Mhm.
Like, I was always really intimidated by it, but I really wanted to learn and finally did. And I really like it. I don't do it all the time, but I enjoy throwing a little FPP project in there, and English paper piecing too. I really like also.
Really.
So, hmm
I've never
so
tried English paper piecing, but I've done a tiny, tiny bit of foundation paper piecing, and it was hard for my brain, but there are some projects that I really like, just single blocks that I really wanna make, and so
mhm.
I'm not giving up. I'm like, "Nope, the more I try, the easier it'll get. I just need to, like, do it more than once a year," kinda thing.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. It's like once you start it, you kind of have to like kind of stay on it. So I try to do like a little project once a month,
Mm.
because it took me forever to learn. Like I was like you. I'm like my brain doesn't work this way. Like what I was like continuously trimming off my seam allowance, because I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like trimming right to the paper
Yeah.
instead of adding my 1/4 inch, which I mean in my brain I knew I was supposed to do, but I would still do it wrong.
Right? I
Yeah,
know.
but I finally once I got the hang of it though, I really liked it. And now I'm just like, okay, now I just gotta maintain this knowledge. Because I don't have that big steep learning curve again, because it's
Yeah.
so kind of counterintuitive to how we normally sew.
Yeah. That's what gets
Yeah.
me is it's, like, backwards, and you have to think about, like,
Yeah.
okay, where I'm sewing is not like, it's gonna go the other way, and I'm backwards to it, so I have to think you're just like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god." But I
it
just
is.
did a foundation paper piece log cabin
Mhm.
block, and which I know you don't have to do FPP, but it was part of, like, this little July challenge, and, so I finally did it, and maybe it was for June, I don't know. Anyway, I was late to it, but um it was really fun, and as I was going, I was like getting better. I didn't have to like keep thinking about it too hard as I was like placing my next pieces and doing the trimming, and it
Mhm.
turned out really cute, and I'm like super proud of it, but I was like, okay,
Yay.
I there's like a pattern I want to make. It's a like a diamond, a big gem, and my Airbnb is quilt themed. So
Oh, okay.
I have in the room I have a couple of hot pads that my friend made for me, but they're so cute. I would never put them in my kitchen because I know they'll get destroyed.
Yeah.
One of them is a cat, like the outline of a cat, but it's made with what's the Tula line with the cats? Is it Tabby Lane?
I'm not sure.
I think so. Anyway, it's like cat food cans, and it's so cute. And then the other one is an avocado. And but I like have them
Yeah.
framed on the wall, and I'm like, okay, I can make my own and frame them, and I don't have to finish them per se like I would a normal quilt. I don't have to put binding on it and whatever, but I haven't even gotten to it because I'm just like, oh, it's daunting to me.
Yeah, no, I know. I have a there's a pattern I saw once by I don't remember her name, but on Instagram it's My Crowded Nest,
Mm-hmm.
and she does FPP patterns, and she has one of a whale,
Oh,
And I really, really, really want to make it, but I'm like, it looks way beyond my skill level, I mean, it's pretty intricate. And so I'm like, I got to start with these small, easy ones so I can get there someday because I still really want to make it. It's still on my
yeah.
bucket list. I have the pattern. I think it's
Mm,
called Caspian. And yeah, it's in my little library of patterns. And I'm like, someday I'll be able to do that.
right. I know, like my friends have done, well, Miranda mostly, I think, has done the foundation paper piecing. She's made like a ton of different blocks. She made like dogs and she's made, you know,
Hmm.
like banners and hearts, and she made some lightning bolts to go on a Harry Potter quilt at one point, and just all these different things. And she made me a pillow, like a throw pillow with a foundation paper piece hummingbird on the front, and
Oh.
it's beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, I could never make this. I mean, I could. I could if I got there, but she's just like so good at it. I'm like, dang, I don't know how I mean, obviously it takes practice, but some people just pick it up so quickly and I'm just like over
Yeah.
here like, "Durr, I don't know."
Yeah, yeah, I think for some people it does come more naturally, and it doesn't come naturally to me either.
Yeah.
So, will I ever I mean, some of them can be so intricate, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't think I'll ever want to do something that's like super, super big or super intricate. I don't think I have the patience to do it.
Yeah.
Um, like, but I do really admire them, and I'm hoping that this Caspian one will be in my range someday.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you probably could do it now.
We'll
You
see. Maybe
gotta
I'll
give
try.
yourself the benefit of the doubt. I
I
know.
have all the fabrics for it and everything. It's all saved. I'm just
Oh my
waiting for to make it.
gosh.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'll be an exciting day to see that pop up on Instagram.
Yeah.
Be like, "You
It'll
did
be
it."
it'll be like 20 years from now. I'm like, finally. Remember I talked about that podcast 20 years ago?
No way. It better not be that long. I wanna see it like this year. You could do it.
We'll see. I'm doubtful that's gonna happen, but we'll see.
I'm always like trying to convince people to do stuff that I'm terrified to do. It's fine. Oh, that's so funny. Well, besides your pattern that's coming out in September, do you have any other patterns in the works for this year or
I have one more. I have one
okay.
more I'm gonna write. It's the design is made and I've got the fabric requirement started, and I'm hoping for it to be like later on in the year, like maybe late October-ish. Like I envision it being a kind of like a good easy like Christmas pattern or just a winter quilt pattern, when you just want to make
Yeah.
something quick. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm really excited for that. Again, I'm really excited for that one too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, that one's next on the slate. And after that, I've got to work on some more designs.
Okay. Well, cool. So
Yeah.
that's good though. At least we've got one more to look forward to this year, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exciting to I just love that like there's so much creativity out there, and I think just from like talking with different designers and being in this on this side of things, like I think one thing that does come up is people feel kind of nervous that the quilting world is like saturated with designers, but I don't think that's true. Like I think the
I
like
I I guess I know how they can feel that way,
mhm.
but here's what I think is I saw this quote once and it said Taylor Swift doesn't stop making music because there's too many singers out there.
Yeah.
And and so I'm like, I just think in any creative field, like, who are you doing it for, I guess?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it because I love to create and I want to give something back to the community that I feel has embraced me,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I understand, like, it can feel overwhelming. Like, I'm on
Mhm.
Instagram too, and like I see like so many patterns and I want to make them all and I know that I can't, and I think there's some
Mhm.
frustration with like, oh, I can't make them all. Why are there so many?
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
But I mean, but realistically, again, like if you have a voice, if
Mhm.
you have something that you want to do, like,
Yeah.
if you have a gift, you should be sharing that,
Yeah.
you know? And
Exactly.
so, I when I read that quote, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I guess I kind of felt the same way. Like, oh, I mean, should I add to this? Should I add to all this? But I'm just like, well, I do it because I love it,
Mhm.
and whether someone buys my patterns or doesn't buy my patterns, it's something I wanted to put out there,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
will. And if people resonate with it, they'll buy it, and if they don't, then they won't. But I'm not gonna stop it just because I'm worried that maybe my voice isn't as important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and that's my thoughts on it exactly, and I I love that quote, like, I mean, if Taylor Swift stops making music, I think the world is gonna stop, to be honest, but
Exactly. And but you could make the argument there are a lot of singers. There are
yeah,
so many aspiring singers out there, right?
right.
And it would be easy to be like, well, do we really need another singer? But she makes music that people love and it resonates with people. And
Yeah, and it's not for
I
everyone, but she
right.
still
Not
does it
everyone loves it.
because
Yeah.
it's who she is and it's what she wants to do, and the people that are loyal, and they're there no matter what, and it's the same with, anything, like you said, putting it out
Mhm.
there. If you feel you have something to share and you're contributing, then just do it, you know? It's
Yeah.
not gonna be for everyone if you're staying true to your authentic self. Like, I think that's the hardest, for me at least, the hardest thing to, like, swallow is that I'm not for everyone, and I know that, and at the end of the day, like, it's best for
Mhm.
that to be true because then I can be who I wanna be, and the people who resonate with that will find me and hopefully stick around and support me, but it can be tricky at times to, like, stay true to myself and still do what I'm doing and not feel like I have to, like, be someone else all of a sudden to make this thing work, you know? It's like,
Right.
I think as long as you're being your authentic self while you're doing your craft or you're sharing your creativity in your business, like, that's where your following will come from, and
Absolutely.
we'll know when there's no more ideas in the world because nobody will have any new ideas, like, you have an
Right.
idea in your brain, that means that there's so much more out there to be had, and so,
Mhm.
you know, keep making, keep designing, keep putting it out there, and
Mhm.
there's something for everybody out there, and I love that part of how things have changed of the quilting community as it is now, is there is something out there for everyone, and
Yeah.
the fact that we have tools to make that space for each other is really, like, such a gift and so cool that we're in this time. Like, what a time to be alive, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We have an opportunity, that to do something and be seen that most people wouldn't have had a chance to do, before all of this. So,
Yeah.
social media can be a double-edged sword, it's
Mhm.
not always rainbows and butterflies, but
Nope.
there is still a lot of positives with it too.
Yeah.
I've met some really amazing people through social media.
Yeah.
I get inspired on social media. I love
Yeah.
looking at people and seeing what they're doing. And, I love these relationships that you can form,
Mhm.
and I've had, in some ways more authentic friendships with people I'm friends with on Instagram, quilters I've met through Instagram, that I've made, like since as an adult, right? Like,
Yeah.
outside of work and things like that, it's really hard to make friends when
Mhm.
you're an adult. And, this has offered me a way to do that. And, I have friends who, when they know I'm going through a hard time, they'll call me and they'll message me and stuff. And I mean, they're checking in on me more than my local friends are,
Right.
And that's why I keep going back to it, and
Yeah.
I love social media because it's like, yeah, there's days when people maybe aren't nice, or you get something you don't want to see or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, there's been a lot more positivity than there's been negativity.
Yeah. Yeah, same, and I
So,
think it is what you make it. And I think some people who see the ugly side of it, it's like, well, you can change that. Like it's all depends on what you engage with and what you
Mhm.
choose to follow and respond to. So if you're only ever responding to and clicking on things that are negative, that's what it's going to keep showing you because you're interacting with that. But if you only ever interact with the stuff you actually want to see or is benefiting you, then that's what it's going to show you. So like I think
Right.
we have so much more control than we think we do, and you can curate your online presence to be what you want it to be. And that sounds like I don't want to say that in a sense of like you can just tune out everything that's negative because that's not what I'm trying to say because life is life and you have to deal with it whatever it hands you. But just in that sense of like it doesn't have to be a negative experience online. And I think as a business, you do kind of put yourself out there in a different way. So you are going to experience some negativity maybe that you don't want to, but again, I think if you stick to your authentic self and you curate your following carefully and, you're not trying to reach out to every single person that exists, but you're niching in and finding your following, then I think it's a lot more far and few between that you do run into the negative stuff. So
Right.
that's
Yeah,
just my
I
two
think
cents.
so. Yeah. I mean, I just try to stick in the quilt universe and, most quilters are very, very kind and sweet and
Yes.
supportive, and so, you know, I'm generally gonna stick with them, right? I'm
Yeah.
not gonna venture out into some of these other areas where there is more negativity, I'm like, I like my little group over here,
Yeah.
I'd say 90% of the people you interact with are gonna be very, very kind and sweet and
Yeah.
supportive, and those are pretty good odds.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah. It's been
Mhm.
it's been like really refreshing to know that you're not going to be faced with garbage, just people being like unnecessarily like nasty for no, just like, why? Where
Right.
did you come from? Go home. Like,
Yeah.
but in the
Yeah.
quilty space, it's like we're just here to love on fabric and love on quilts and pass along this love to more and more people. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So
I agree. Yeah.
I'm glad you're in it and you would get to see the beauty that comes out of your brain because you've got some amazing stuff to share. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
yeah, of course. So, for anybody who hasn't found you online yet, how can they get to you?
Well, I'm mostly live on Instagram. So you can find me at midlife_quilter.
Okay.
And if you want to, right now my shop is in transition because I did stop selling fabric, but I am adding more quilting things, more gifts for quilters, stationery, things like that, and my website. And that's also where you can get my patterns. That would be www.midlifequilter.shop.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll put links to both things in the show notes so people can get to you easily. And oh man, other than that, I'm just so excited to have talked to you today. And I'm so grateful that we had this time together. And
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm definitely
yeah.
gonna be. I'm already following your page. Do you have like an your own quilting page as well outside of the podcast page?
Yeah, so the quilting business is at Sweet Pea Design Company
Okay,
and
I'm gonna make sure to follow too.
yeah, that's where I post most of the quilty stuff just because, that's where my business is. So that's where you'll
Yeah,
see our makes and our long arming and all
fun.
that
Yeah,
stuff. So yeah,
very cool.
cool. Well, thank you so much again. And I can't wait for people to see your new pattern that's coming out and or both new patterns that are coming out and
Yeah.
hopefully go run and see your cute bundle of fabric and get to just experience you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.